Thanks for being on the Heart Dealer podcast. I know a lot about you, but I want to get more info. I'm just going to kind of go through a bunch of stuff: life, music, soil, drowning pool, everything. Um, we'll just have a conversation. So
Sounds good, Chris.
you're born in Muncie, Indiana. You and I are about the same age. I think we're about 5 years
Nope.
apart. How did you end up in the UK?
Well, that's a yeah. Wait a minute. No, that is not a lie. I was actually technically born in Muncie, Indiana. Yeah, Ball Hospital. Funny little thing about Ball Hospital right now, Muncie, Indiana, is the Ball family. Had something big to do with Muncie, Indiana. So everything around there, Ball State University, Ball Hospital. So my retirement plan to this day still is once the music is all said and done with, I'm going to open up a liquor store downtown Muncie, Indiana, down around campus area. And of course, it's going to be called, as everything is, it's going to be called Ball Liquors. Because I'm thinking that I can make enough money on merch alone that I don't have to sell a damn beer, nut. I don't have to sell shit. I can sell enough koozies with ball liquors on it to be set for life. I'm sure of it. That's my, I patent pending. You can't steal that shit. That's mine. But that's so we got that. Yeah.
So,
Anyway,
what
so
if
the question was,
no, that's good. So I do marketing for all these artists. So how about I give you a freebie and it'll be get soiled or soil yourself at Ball Liquor.
there you go. You drink so much at Ball Liquor, you soil yourself. We had a messed up idea one time, and we actually carried through with it. We sold at shows. We had panties, and of course it said soil, and then it was a little ed tagged onto the end, so it was soiled panties. I don't know whose fucking idea that was, but that ain't right, man. That ain't right.
Did they sell?
Yes, they did, regretfully. Yeah,
And it works.
I yeah,
So how'd you end up in the
yeah.
UK?
Uh, I always wanted to retire here. It was my plan since I played my first show over here in 2000 and 2001, 2002. I've just always loved it over in the UK, and I always planned. I fell in love with a city called York. If you ever watched the Braveheart and that stuff, it's all, oh, they sacked York, and all this shit. And then York is just a beautiful, very historic town up north, in northern England. Um, uh, it's exchanged hands many a times with the Vikings and Romans and I'm just throwing the Romans in there. I have no idea. I'm not a fucking historian. I don't know, but it exchanged hands a lot because everything around here has. But the It's a beautiful town, very historic town. Fell in love with it. Always planned on retiring there, but then I ended up meeting my wife through a mutual friend of ours, and she's English, has a successful business over here. So when we got together, it was kind of like, where are we going to go? It made much more sense for me to come this direction since I always wanted to anyway. And she has successful business here that she wasn't. It was been ridiculous, been stupid to leave. So my I became the immigrant and came over here to England and went through that whole process. That was actually just the end of last year. That after 7 years, I finally finalized the process, the long, expensive process of becoming not a citizen, but becoming a legal resident of the United Kingdom. So, yeah, that's what led me here. Was always wanting to be here, and then I met a woman that's so far for 7 years she's put up with my shit. That's why I'm here in England.
Good for you. I mean, that's one of the best reasons to do it. Um, so going back to Indiana, you said that Muncie like wasn't your hometown. Regardless, tell me a bit about your home life and your childhood. I really would love to know what led from that to I've discovered music, and I'll tie that into obviously the bands and stuff and your journey. But like, how did music factor into your youth?
Well, I was a very blessed, a lucky young guy. My family was amazing, amazing parents. My mom was a kindergarten teacher at the local elementary school. My dad was a supervisor at one of the glass factories. I come from a town, though I was born because there was no hospital in Dunkirk, Indiana. I was born in Muncie. I actually was raised from the time that I was a baby to when I went to college. I was raised in a town called Dunkirk, Indiana, and it's like one of those like 3,000 population towns, like little towns in Indiana. You like just you blink and you miss it if you're driving through it. It's one stoplight, two cop cars.
Mm.
Completely, all three things are completely unnecessary. I mean, nowadays the cop cars are definitely necessary because just to control the rampant meth that's going around. But
Small,
but
small.
that's small town America for you right there. I don't the 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 but I was raised there, as I was saying, very blessed with the family I was raised in. They're great parents. I was always known as Mike and Susie's boy, and had an older brother, Matt, that 5 years older than me, that was very successful with everything that he did, whether it was music or whether it was sports or anything. So I grew up as Michael and Susie's boy, Matt's brother. So I basically went through school. You know, I was very lucky to have the family that I had. Um, but what people didn't know was that Susie Homemaker, my mom and my dad, the church every Sunday. I was raised in a household that, yeah, it was church every Sunday morning, uh, usually youth group Sunday evenings, and Bible study either Tuesday or Thursday of the week. Um, but what people didn't realize was that every evening when the front door of the McCombs house closed, that my dad had strategically hidden within the front room these huge stereo speakers,
Nice.
and they were wired. He had holes in the like he had it all wired going out, going into another room and everything, where he had a system all set up that people wasn't aware of the power of the Death Star that he had going on in the other room. So when the front door closed in the evening in small Dunkirk, Indiana, and the Aerosmith or the AC/DC or the Pink Floyd or the Grateful Dead or Bob Dylan, uh, that would be coming on the stereo. And my mom was my dad was very musical. He pressed the play button better than any human being ever. That was his musical ability right there, was hitting the play button. But he loved music, so it was always going on in the house. My mom, on the other hand, was actually she played piano very well, played flute, played different things. She was musical in the aspect of actually uh, instrumentation. And then my brother got into music and everything. I got into local bands and all, and I think that was probably my biggest influence ever was my brother. So there was always music. I guess that's the bottom. The answer to your question is I grew up in a house where there was always music. It was an amazing family, blessed and everything, and most people wouldn't have guessed it, but it was that same Susie Homemaker, the church going family that also led to probably sending me on my way to screaming at people for a living. So.
That's amazing, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, the fact that you had a nice, warm environment, a loving home, and a good childhood with a good family, and that you infused or that your parents infused music into that is not a bad thing. Not everyone has to come from
No.
like the struggle, so to speak, to understand it. We all have our own struggles, regardless of our upbringing. So that makes perfect sense. You got the music, you got the rock and roll. There's that fun going on. At what point did you say to yourself, you know what, I want to sing? Like, did you go to church? Was it a church-based thing? Was it just out of
I'm still trying to get out of it. Shit. No, the I played bass for years. I think my grandmother bought me my first drum set. I'm sorry, I'm trying to jack my computer up so it doesn't overheat because I've had to change locations here. It's less than ideal, but family matters come first, so I've had to relocate here. So I'm making do, man. Um,
all good?
so I appreciate your patience with me today. But the what was the question?
The transition to music. We know how like it started to get infused in
Oh,
you. When did you say I
yeah.
want to do this?
Yeah, I always wanted to play drums, and Lord knows why. Because it's funny because nowadays anybody that's followed me on my socials back before rejoining Joining Pool and doing the two band thing, I used to have more time on my hands and I used to write a lot on my Facebook musicians page and used to do what the people got to know as the Angry Hobbit rants and people just got a kick out of them. I guess I have a very uneducated way of writing, but people got a kick out of I guess the way that my head jelly worked, and it was it was it, okay. I was wondering how the hell I got there. Sorry, shit. Yeah. So anybody that was familiar with my writings and stuff, as far as that goes, has probably witnessed me ragging on drummers and everything. So it's kind of funny when I actually would admit to you that my first passion was I always wanted to be a drummer, and it's funny because I rag on drummers nonstop now, but except for the fact, I mean, drowning pools. I'm lucky enough to have two really good ones right now between TJ with SOiL and Mike Luce is the commander. Man, he is one of the most underrated drummers I think in the business. But ah man, this is what I ramble. This is what I do.
That's
My
okay.
but I always wanted to play drums. So I got my first drum set. I sucked at it. My grandma bought me my first drum set. I was friggin' horrible at it. Um, but my friend got a drum set too, and he didn't suck at it. So he ended up being my drummer through my young years. And actually, I had a four-piece Ludwig, and he had a five-piece Slingerland that we combined together so that he could have a double bass kit and enough toms and all that shit. And but it was the ugliest looking fucking thing ever because I had like a yellow pearl finished Ludwig, and he had like a gray Slingerland drum kit. Yeah, it looked like it looked like what it was. It looked like somebody put it together out of a junkyard or something. But and then from there, after I realized I wasn't dexterous enough, I wasn't coordinated enough to play drums. I got my first guitar. I sucked at that. Took lessons and everything, but I sucked. And this is back even when I had a whole hand, I sucked. And it was so then I ended up graduating, I say, graduating to bass guitar, and where I played bass for years and years. And I loved playing bass, man, because the bass you could just kind of hang out in the background. You weren't expected to be that front guy and everything. So I loved bass, uh, and long story short, I know that's funny for me to say, but long story short, I screwed up one day, and I was showing as we were looking for a singer back. This is back in the garage band days still living in Indiana, like junior high days, like seventh, eighth grade. Um, we were trying to find singers, and just striking out. And so one day I called everybody over and I stuck the cassette tape in to play the song that we'd been working on. I was like, this is what I've been hearing. I'm singing along with it. The guys were like, the music stopped and everybody was silent. And I was like, ah, shit, that must have sucked. And everybody was like, dude, why are we looking for a singer? We can find another bass player. You can sing. And I was like, F all y'all. I am not going to be some friggin' singer. And so I continued to play bass. Those guys didn't know what the hell they were talking about, and I continued to play bass for years until I quit music during my first year of college. And it was my second year of college that I got the bug biting me again. I got a hold of the guys I used to jam with. I was like, "Hey, man, I'd like to get back with you guys and start jamming again and everything. I need music back in my life." And the guys were like, "Well, we've already got a bass player, so if you want to come back in, you're gonna have to sing." And I was like, "You sons of bitches, you got me." and and so that the bass playing days were behind me, and I had to pick up a damn microphone.
Good for you.
So yeah, singing has never been a it is now, of course, 30 years later, but it is something I struggled with for years and years and years. Struggled with just I don't give a shit what I have to say. I can't imagine anybody else would care. So being up on stage and being asked to entertain people, it was something that definitely was not natural for me.
That's not a bad thing. I mean, a lot of people would argue that the best people to be in those positions are the ones that don't want to be in those positions because then it's more pure, it's more honest, it's more real. Um, so 97, I think it was 97, you're like mid 20s and SOiL finds you and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're on your career, you're on your fast track. Is that accurate?
Eh, well, don't know if I'd call it fast, but I was on a track of some sort. But yeah, I was still in Indiana at the time, and they got a hold of me. And at the time, I was in two bands in Indiana, and the guys in SOiL came from two different death metal bands, and they wanted to do something more along the lines of their roots, the kind of stuff that they grew up to, more rock. Um, so they were putting together this band called SOiL, and they were looking for a singer. They came across a demo of a compilation of unsigned bands that was through this independent, excuse me, through this independent magazine out of California called Wild Rags. And Tim, bass player for SOiL, got a copy of that CD and he was listening to it and he said it was all death metal, so it was like skip, 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 and all of a sudden we were the band I was in, which was kind of a hardcore band, was was the last was the last band on there, and so he heard that and right away he wrote me a letter. Not well, this was before email, boys and girls. He wrote me a letter and mailed it off to me in the U.S. Postal Service. And uh, at the time, I was in two different bands back home. I was in a kind of this stoner rock band. I was in this hardcore band. One band so so I ended up getting together. They thought I was close to Chicago. I was on the other side of Indiana. So it was like a 4 to 5 hour drive one way to get to where they were. They thought I was, oh, he's in Indiana. It's right next door. I was on the other side. Um, so it ended up being for once I joined SOiL, it ended up being about 6 to 9 months. My life consisted of I had a 40 hour a day job at a cabinetry, and that's where I dropped a little piece of me, a couple of little pieces of me off at, and the I was working a 40-hour work week. I was going to college at the time on certain days. Um, but then after work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays after work, I would jam with the stoner rock band, and after work on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'd go and jam with the hardcore band, rehearse, and then after a rehearsal on Friday, I would then jump in my truck and drive 5 hours up to Chicago, where I would then jam with SOiL on Saturday and Sunday before heading 5 hours back to Indiana to start the week over again. So for about 6 to 9 months, that was my schedule, was balancing all three bands along with a 40-hour a week job and all that shit until finally I moved to Chicago and I lived in the garage of our guitar player for about 2 years through Chicago summers and Chicago winters, where I got the enjoyment of scraping frozen saliva off my face in Chicago winters and waking up in a puddle of your own sweat in Chicago summers. So I got to do that for a few years. So that was my that was my fast track.
I mean, I appreciate you elaborating because I think most of the time people see anyone in any position of success, whether it's fronting a band or running a business, and they just see like the house, the car, the good times, whatever it is. They don't see all the fucking hustle that goes on to get there, right? And the amount of people that are on that same path but drop off because the path is too hard is even bigger. So good for you for sticking it through. I'm sure
Thank
there's
you.
there's luck in the Lord, as some might say, but
Oh, there's a huge amount of luck. You know that from the people you've talked to. I mean, I've gotten the opportunity to share the stage with back in the day. I got to share the stage, especially coming up in Chicago. That's where SOiL came from, and we were sharing the same local stages with Dan and Dave and Fuzz and the Disturbed guys. And at the time, the scene was so healthy because we all were pulling for each other. It was an amazing scene to be a part of. I think that's what made the scene so strong is that we were all pulling for each other. But you had Disturbed and 5.0 and From Zero and Loudmouth and Lands ourselves, and it was I don't see. This is what I do. I don't know where I was going with that, but it was just a great scene to be a part of and everything. And but it was, man. We were all dogs, man. We were all working it. We saw as much of each other as we almost did our own bandmates because we were at the same shows every night handing out demos to free CDs to people just to try to get our music in people's ears and try to get people interested in shows that we might have coming up. So we were we that was such a tight knit group of bands in Chicago area. But my point, during that time, I shared the stage with some amazing bands that we all know, such as Disturbed, and for those really familiar with the scene, From Zero and stuff, because they all 5.0, they all were signed to different labels for a short period of time. But there were also some great musicians like Greg Fulton, who's still doing it back there. And I remember Greg Fulton is an amazing guitar player. He was in a band at the time called Rebels Without Applause. But there were so many musicians like that throughout the from that point on to this day. I mean, still you might do a show with a baby band on a bill that you never heard of before and you never hear of again afterwards. But man, they're so talented. So I've gotten the point of the story is that I've gotten to share the stage with people that are far more talented than myself. So luck has so much to do with it. It really does. You have to put yourself in position to take advantage of that luck when it comes along, and that's where the the puddle of sweat and the frozen saliva comes in, is putting yourself in the right position to better your chances of succeeding when luck comes about, if it does. But yeah, the luck does have a huge percentage of why I'm sitting here today.
absolutely. But I think you said a good, made a good point there too, that we have to make our own luck. The grind is kind of integrated directly with the luck and the creation of luck or the opportunity. Fun fact, just taking a quick step back. So when I started V13 Media, the magazine, the website, we were Pure Grain Audio. That was the first iteration of our company, and we got a stigma because we were rock, metal, punk, hardcore, and so we got stigmatized as being a heavy site, which I didn't want. I wanted to cover all types of music and culture, hence the name change eventually. But in that first year, 2005, one of the artists that reached out to me directly, and I remember getting the emails and being like, wow, I can't believe I'm getting these emails, because he was writing himself, was Tim King. So, you know, I already had SOiL on my radar because of the earlier albums and everyone knew Halo and whatnot. But it was just funny that all of a sudden Tim was doing like his own PR, his own outreach, and just hustling and grinding. So SOiL goes back far for me.
Awesome, awesome, that's great.
You talked about
So you're
hustle.
old like I am.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, this is
All right.
you talked about balance and hustle, and I believe that I only just learned this. I've had a couple very difficult but productive years. And one of the things I've learned is expansion, that life actually doesn't get easier. It continues to get harder as we ascend, as we grow, but we learn to handle more. It's like going to the gym, maybe like being a Navy SEAL. You have a capacity or a tolerance, and then you constantly push that bar up. So life doesn't get easier. Your ability to handle it just has to continue to evolve. Speaking of which, you're a father. You have, I think, three kids. How do you mix two bands and the kids and a wife and all that stuff. Like, what's your plan? What's your go-to?
Vodka. Um, no, I was I've lived a crazy little existence when it comes to family and stuff, and both of my full children are both have different moms, so I was very I've been very blessed by the people in my lives. I was very lucky that both of them had very good mothers, and that 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 did an amazing job of raising my boys with a dad that was sometimes thousands of miles away. And so like my boys are 26 and 22, 27 and 22. So my boys aren't necessarily boys anymore. They're men, and and they became great men for having a dad that was circling the globe and trying to levy down the punishment for whatever they had done wrong over the telephone as I'm getting ready to jump on an airplane somewhere. I still remember one time getting a phone call. You need to talk to your son. And I was like, I'm getting ready to fly to Europe right now. We're supposed to be getting on the plane. And she filled me in real quick. I get on the phone with him, and I just had one thing to say to him. This was Parenting 101 by Ryan McCombs. I told my son, I said, son, I said, only got one thing to say to you, and I'll call you back once I get to England. I said, but I want you to think about something. If you're gonna be fucking stupid, be smart about being fucking stupid. That was it. And to this day, he still laughs about that little. If you're going to be stupid enough to get into, to do something stupid, be at least smart enough not get caught for it. That was Dad's advice at that point in time. Um, but no, I was great mothers, great children, and uh, I have a 13, well, will be 13, going on 21, um, stepson, and just just again, just blessed with great people around me, great people like my children were blessed to not, yeah, they had me as a dad, and though if you ask them, I believe they very much thought I was a great dad, but at the same time, I was not around a lot because I was on tour the
Mhm.
majority of their young lives. So I learned that process of like when they were really little, dad's job was cool. He's on MTV, he's doing this shit, whatever. And then all of a sudden they get to be those teenage years and they realize that it's dad's job is the reason that dad's not around. So dad's job kind of sucks, and then they get old enough to where their friends then think their dad's job is cool, so then dad's job is cool again. So I went through that process with every one of the kids. So it's a they keep you grounded. They do, no matter what you're doing through the years, no matter whether uh I was on Crew Fest spending my nights with Tommy in Tommy's little playpen tent, after show tent, and then spending my noon having lunch with Nikki or whatever, about my little routine. No matter what it was, whatever the craziness was, through the years, uh, the family's always been that grounding spot.
Good for you. I mean, I with my team and people I work with, I always say family first. Like if something's up with family, I don't care what it is. Go and tend to it. That's the priority. I have two kids. My girlfriend has two kids. We're now expecting another one. So our house is full of madness. And personally, I try to just
You're
call.
headed towards Brady Bunch, man.
I'm done. I don't know how this happened, but I'm done for sure.
Oh,
Uh,
I'll send you a book. It describes exactly how it happened.
that's funny. Um, yeah, I think being present is super important. It sounds like, you obviously having the job that you have and touring the world is going to be taxing on that type of family environment. But it sounds like you were raised well. You had a lot of love at home, and that stuck with you, and so you put that back into your kids and family whenever you can, staying present.
I've tried to, and I've always, to this day, I have times where, especially with, like I said, with with the younger stepson, I see him experiencing things that reminds me of the things that I missed with my boys. Um, like I really respect you when you say family first because I didn't live by that moniker for many years. Though I felt like I did, in reality, I never turned down a tour. I
Mm,
never turned down shows. I never wanted to be the reason the band wasn't doing something. And so I never turned down anything. I never, so I missed most birthdays. I missed a lot of holidays. I missed a lot of firsts. I missed a lot of seconds and thirds. And so there's times in my, I should say, accelerated adult life here that it gets to me at times. You know, I see, like I was saying, I see my stepson experiencing things that it reminds me of what I missed.
yeah, I could only imagine how hard that is, and I think that's a sacrifice that we pay. You know, as a creator, as someone who's chasing his purpose, is chasing his art. Sometimes we have to make those choices. But you also did say something that I agree with, is that, and I've only learned this recently. If you have a good team or a good teammate at home, a good partner, they support you and they support the greater good of the cause of the family, even if that means sacrificing some time or whatever, because it'll allow for a better future for all. That sounds like
Yeah.
you're doing that as well.
Yeah, my oldest son said to me about 3 or 4 years ago, he said to me, he goes, you know, Dad, I know that you have trouble with things once in a while, and I'm gonna fucking say this without getting emotional, but he said to me, it's one of the greatest things ever said to me. He goes, you know, I just wanted you to know that when you have those times that you may beat yourself up or whatever, I think I think the world of what you did because you taught us to chase your dream. And I've never held that against you. And so that, I mean, that meant shit. That meant the world, you know.
Yeah, you're making me tear up. You know, I'm thinking about my because my
Ah.
kids are still little. I got 7 and 4, and now soon to be 0, and my girlfriend's 10 and 8. So it's like all these little humans between 0 and
Oh yeah.
it's such an amazing time
Holy.
to see them learn and grow, and so I can only imagine how you feel because I'm anticipating what it's going to be like to have these teenagers and these 20-year-olds. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to come to you for tips in about 5 years when they all hit 13.
If you're gonna be stupid, be smart about being stupid.
I'm just going to show them that clip.
Right.
Cool. So SOiL starts, all of a sudden his first album's out and it just blows up. Like, could you even have imagined? Maybe it didn't blow up straight away, but it has since become such a phenomenal album. Did you ever like go into it thinking like, holy shit, the first one's gonna be a banger?
No, you hope, but it it was such a weird experience because uh, it- it's way too long of a story, but it was happening on radio already. And the song Halo was already happening on radio before we ever got signed. And it was happening on radio in a huge national way before we ever got signed. And there's a whole reason why it happened, blah, blah, blah. Basically, long story short, a record label, what the hell was it? Columbia, not Columbia, but uh, one of the majors. I'm sorry. Anyway, a label, an A&R guy from a label wanted to sign us. He's actually the gentleman that signed. He ended up when he left that label, he went to another one, Giant Records. He's actually the gentleman that signed Disturbed to Giant Records way back in the day. But he wanted to sign SOiL, and he was the low man on the totem pole there and didn't have enough clout. So he worked up a deal. He used to be the program director at a radio station in Orlando, Florida, big influential rock radio station, and he made a deal with the current program director that that if we would agree to give them a right of first refusal, a 30-day right of first refusal, he wanted them to spin the song 2 times a day for a week and see what the phones were on it, see what the phone response on the song was. And from there, then if it was positive, he would have proof then to take into his bosses and say, see, this song works at radio, we should sign them. It ended up backfiring on him. God bless his heart, but it ended up backfiring on him because not only did it work, it ended up being the most requested song on the radio station. And this was a huge rock radio station out of Orlando. It ends up being the number one most requested song on the radio station. And from there, it just grew like wildfire. Radio stations all over the country started picking it up. Next thing you know, Halo is happening. We're not even signed yet. So there was like this big bidding war. We were being flown out to LA. We were being flown out to New York City. We had people from Warner Brothers sitting in our garage, sitting 4 feet away from us as we're jamming, just wanting to hear us, wanting to get to know us, take us out for dinner and stuff. So we went through this whole amazing courtship process of all these labels and everything. Um, See, I did it again. I lose track of where I'm going. I lose
No,
track
no,
of the
no, no,
question.
that's good. That's perfect. I just want to understand like a bit of the story, and ultimately your stories and your responses are going to lead me to, more cool questions.
Well, it was. Oh, okay. So by the time the album comes out, God, see, I will find my way. The woods is thick, but I will find my way. The by the time the album came out, the song was already happening in the United States. It was already successful. We were already a success as far as radio goes. We were a huge success as far as radio goes. But the album ends up the release day is 9/11. The
Oh man,
nine
actual
11.
2001. Shit.
Yeah, I still have that. I have a pass up there on the in my cabinet that is the pass for the record release show in Chicago for 9/11. Um, it was, mind you, we sold great. We outsold. There. I think Slayer's "God Hates Us All" album came out the same time, same day. We outsold everything that came out around that time. We outsold everything, but the problem is that nobody sold well. So to say we outsold everybody was, yeah, that's awesome, but it still wasn't good numbers in the States. Outside the States, we were killing it. But in the States, man, people, if you lived through it in the United States, people were scared to leave their house to go to work, let alone leave their house to go pick up a CD at Best Buy. It just wasn't happening. So it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, far more important things happened that day. Far more, but as far as just on a personal level, shitty fucking day to put out an album.
Yeah, seriously. Totally
So
agree. That
so
was a
yeah,
heavy.
it was great. We did have success, but man, you sit back sometimes you wonder what if, because it took a long time to recover what little we could as far as the United States go. And really it was our determination that finally won over the states. You would have thought it would have been instant it should have been instant success because of the radio play we were already getting.
Mhm.
But the absolute worst day for the album to come out. And it was buried before it had a chance. In the States, everywhere else in the world, we were flying high. We were selling out shows first time in the UK, first time in Germany, first time in all these countries, first time there selling out shows. But the U.S. ended up being a very hard nut to crack, or it was a process to crack that nut because of the when the release of the album was.
Interesting. I mean, going back to your point about being courted so heavily, how hard was it at that age, without having had the experience that you have now, to kind of stay humble and grounded with all the accolades and adoration that was happening?
Oh, I didn't at all, man. I would eat all the M&Ms but the green ones. It was I was a complete prick to, no, I'm kidding. I My upbringing in 2004 when I quit SOiL, a lot of people have a hard time understanding the timeline here.
Mhm.
There was a 9 months to a year in between me quitting SOiL and joining Drowning Pool because
Yep.
I had no intention of getting back in the music industry. When I quit SOiL, I was burnt. I didn't want anything to do with the industry anymore. I didn't want anything to do with the music business anymore. I didn't want anything to do with most of the people in the music industry anymore. I was a small town. I was I was I was Dunkirk, Indiana, man. I was that one stoplight, two cop car town mentality kid. I felt more comfortable surrounded by cornfields than I did by a crowd. Um, so it was not hard. At least I feel like it wasn't hard at all for me to stay grounded. Plus, I had a family early on. You know, when I talk about my kids being 27, 22 years old, I was a dad when
Hmm.
this was going on. So, I was very, I had all that keeping me grounded. Um, so it wasn't something that I had to even think about. It was just who I was. It just the upbringing that I had. I think that made that possible. It wasn't until much later in life that when alcohol got involved that I probably got a little loose. But the train tracks got a little slippery. But but early on, man, I didn't start drinking until my 30s. So my whole first run with SOiL, I didn't drink. So I still had that same focus that I had as that kid sleeping in that garage, that as that kid playing in three bands and working at 40. I was still that guy, no matter what success we were having. Walking onto a set, walking onto a set of a $350,000 music video for Halo, and it's an entire set built on a soundstage in Hollywood, and I'm blown away. I can't believe that somebody this is for us. This is, and that's just the way first time flying over into England, I wept just
Hmm.
looking out of the window and seeing below me the lights of London. And, man, I just wish my dad had been there. Just
Well,
thinking,
that shows gratitude. I mean,
dude, how the hell
that's a
did I get
beautiful
here,
thing.
So I was always that mentality. I was always that just very grateful for the fact that people have allowed us to do this for every step of the way.
That's nice. That's really nice. So, authenticity is like kind of one of the themes that seems to have been coming up regularly on this podcast so far. Being true to yourself, being true to the industry, creating art for art's sake. Um, were you staying, I guess, true to yourself when you took that break between like from the industry before you came back? Or was it just you said burnt out, but tell me more about like what prompted it and then what you were doing during that time.
They were, Soil it's a different lineup today than it was back in the day. Me, Tim, and Adam are the only three original members in the band. And I'm not saying the current lineup is free from what I'm about to say. We were all younger back then.
Mhm.
We had different ones of us had different priorities, and we we were we let certain things bug us. We let certain things wear on us that older versions of us can look back on and go, that was stupid.
Yep.
But at the time, I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I was necessarily being represented. I didn't like my surroundings anywhere,
Mhm.
whether it was, and it wasn't all man. There were some great people within our that we were associated with manager wise. There were some great people that we were associated with label wise, but there were also people that were just working a job and didn't
Yeah.
give a shit about anything except for their own progress. And I wasn't used to that. Again, the one stoplight, two cop car, small town kid. I wasn't used to that. I was used to driving down the street and waving at your neighbor. I wasn't used to the mentality of this fake mentality that I was surrounded by, inside and out. Um, so I just, for me, it was just time to go home and be a full-time dad and be a full-time husband. I couldn't handle the bull crap of the industry anymore, whether it was
Yeah,
internally within SOiL or the external around us.
good for you. Self-preservation. Um, I want to talk about, your life a bit, about music, because one of the things I really value in these conversations is trying to extract tips and tricks for the people that are coming up behind you, so to speak. And then obviously I want to talk about Johnny Pool. What would you say is like the top lesson or one of the top lessons you've learned as a vocalist so far? Like what is one of the things that has hindered you or helped you?
Take care of your shit. Take care, you know, take care of yourself, because when you're if you're lucky enough, if you're blessed enough to have people that keep you around and give time out of their lives to support your music for enough time that you find yourself sitting in your 50s still being allowed to
Mm,
do this, make sure you take care of this so it's still with you at the same time, because I didn't. I didn't. And though it's still here, and I'm still, every time I get up on stage and every time I walk off stage, I'm like, made it through another one. Back in the
mm,
day, it just worked. People be like, how do you warm up? And I'd be like, Marlboro, you know? I don't know. I didn't do any warm ups or warm downs or anything.
mm.
I remember an ENT one time telling me, giving me lessons on how I should warm up and how I should warm down after shows. And then right after that, we did a show with Motorhead out in California. And it was the first show after this whole meeting with this person, telling me how you don't you have to be conscious of how you hold your head when you sing. You can't be smoking anymore. You can't drink. You all this. And I'm standing there watching sound check for Motorhead, and Lemmy walks up on stage and he's carrying a bottle of Jack Daniels in one hand. He's got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. They put the strap. He sets the bottle of Jack Daniels down on the drum riser. They put the bass on him. He takes a cigarette off, takes a big hit off of it, sticks it in the strings on his headstock, and he turns around. And if you're familiar with Motorhead, Lemmy always had that microphone cranked up in the air to where he was always singing
Yep.
like that. And I was like, there, right there, he is doing everything wrong, according to some ENT in Philadelphia. He's doing everything wrong. But and Lord knows, Lemmy was no songbird, but at the same time, Lemmy was Lemmy. And
Absolutely.
so, at that point in time, I was like, to each their own. Everybody's wired different. Everybody's built different. And I was very lucky, man. I could sing days upon days, and I could be on tour for 13 months out of the year. I could be, it was nonstop, and it never failed me. And I knew how lucky I was, because I'd be on tour sometimes with other singers who, man, if they had two or three shows in a row, they were struggling, they were hurting, and so I knew how lucky I was to have this. But I took advantage of it. I didn't take so nowadays, now that I'm 50 and I finding myself still allowed to do this. I'm doing my vocal warm ups and I'm doing my vocal warm downs, and I'm finally taking care of it to try to squeeze a few more years out of it. But that I would say that, man, that not only count your blessings, not only realize how blessed you are to do this for a living, if you get the opportunity, but take care of it, because it's what you're relying on to take care of you at the end of the day. So make sure you take care of it
That's awesome. I
and mind
appreciate
your
that.
goddamn dollars and pennies.
That's for everyone. That is
Yeah,
for everyone.
yes, very
Learn how
true.
to not save, but learn how to invest and make sure that that money is being reinvested and not just blown. Um, you mentioned the fingers earlier. You also had a health scare in 2014. Like, how much is health and fitness uh, something that's part of you? You're laughing. How
Not
much?
as much as my wife wishes it was. She drags my ass to the gym every day off she's got. She she's always purchasing new, whether it's workout bands or whatever it is to send with me on the road. Always download it. I mean, I've got this Garmin watch here that informs me of every single thing about my health that could be humanly possible. The one thing I find it funny though is that about 8 times a day it tells me I'm having a heart attack. Um, but no, yeah, I did. As you mentioned, I had a stroke. Um, so I've had my share of health scares. And back in 2001, when we first got signed, I had a throat cancer scare. So
Oh wow.
I've had my little bouts. I say little bouts. I shouldn't have survived the stroke. It was a massive. Uh, should never have survived that. I was very lucky to walk out on that one. But I mean, so lucky that I quit drinking for 6 whole months. But it was but it um yeah, I do far more exercise than I want to. We'll put it that way. I do
Well, that's
far more
good.
than
You're
I want
taking
to,
care.
but far less than my wife wishes I would.
Yeah, fair. You're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You're doing, stuff for your health, for your mind, for your voice. I think there's a lot of really good information in there for anyone else that might be watching.
Oh yeah,
Um,
you have to take care of it, all of it. Especially, I wish I had done it early on. Because it might be a little easier to stand up nowadays. It might be a little bit, I may not need to have 2 or 3 steps before I start walking normal because of the years and years of jumping off of risers and stuff and
mm,
landing like a jackass, and just the hips are shot, the knees are shot. CJ, the guitar player for Drowning Pool, his knees and ankles are just trashed from years of him jumping around and everything. So we all feel it. So yeah, I wish I would have paid more attention to my diet and my exercise like I do now back then.
Amazing. I mean, we I think we all do. Hindsight is so important.
Yeah,
I try to have what I call present hindsight, like learning or seeing the lesson now before I have to learn it later.
right.
I was blessed to have kids late in my life because that has forced me to stay athletic, forced me to stay fit, and then if I don't, they chase me. So health and fitness is definitely crucial to keep going. I got a few other questions here, but why don't we pivot into drowning pool? You just mentioned stage antics and whatnot. How did you go from this is crazy, I need to get back to my roots, I need to take a break from all the madness that's happening, and then a year-ish later, you join an even bigger band with even more, work to do?
Drowning Pool. When I say the chaos that surrounded me, Drowning Pool was my. Man, when we our paths would cross on the road. Dave was one of my. It was Dave and Chad Gray were like my spirit animals. In the early days. They were the singers that I found myself really connecting with, and to this day, if I remember we were just doing a festival last year, and somebody came to my bunk. I'd already turned in for the night, and somebody came to my bunk. Was like, Chad's outside, man. He heard, he came by, wants to see you, and still to this day, we see each other, and it, it's like 20 years ago. um, and Dave was, again, Dave was one of my best friends in the business. I mean, my youngest son is named after Dave, Mitchell David. Um, Dave's the only man whose name is tattooed on my body, and that took place before he passed away. It was so that was a big part of it. I mean, it was because of him that he was a big fan of SOiL, and because of getting to know him is the reason I got to know the rest of the guys. And so
Mm.
anytime our paths would cross on the road, it was a highlight to my road time. And other than the time on stage, of course. But so when they came calling, um, to be frank, the bug was starting to bite again. I was starting to miss it a little bit. And so when they called, it was the right time. and it was really the only band at that time that would have, because there were so many opportunities when I stepped away from SOiL. There were so many opportunities from labels wanting me to write with their baby bands and wanting me to front that project, and
Mhm.
I know I had no desires. But when Drowning Pool called, it was a no brainer, and it was actually I flew down to Dallas and no one knew anything. It was a secret. I flew down to Dallas and spent a weekend with the guys, jammed a couple nights, and I'd flown back to Indiana and I was driving down the road and my phone rings. I see who's calling me and it's Joanne. It's Jo Joanne Williams, Dave's mom. And so I pulled over and she's like, Ryan, where you at? And I was like, I'm in Indiana. She goes, really? Yeah. Well, one of Dave's old friends uh, is in a band and they rehearse right next to they rehearse underneath Drowning Pool's rehearsal space. And he said this past weekend that Drowning Pool was up there playing, but it didn't sound like Jason Jones singing. It sounded like the singer for SOiL is what he said. So I'm calling you just to see where you're at. And I said, well, I'm in Indiana, Joe. I promise you, I'm in Indiana. All right. Well, I just want you to know, Charlie and I was talking, Dave's dad. And he goes, we just wanted you to know that if anybody was gonna take Dave, if anybody was gonna sing for Drowning Pool, Dave would have wanted it to be you. And when when Mama Williams gives you the green light, there's no saying no at that point. So I already wanted to, but at that point it was a done deal. Because at that I was having trouble with the feeling of that's my brother,
Mhm.
man. I felt kind of odd about the thought of stepping on his feet. But when his mom said what she said, it was like, all right, yeah, that's the green light that I needed to run with this.
I didn't know that. That's really touching, and it's funny because I've always loved doing interviews and meeting artists and talking to artists because what you end up doing with the really nice ones, the genuine ones, is you put so much more. How do I explain this? The music becomes even more meaningful once you like for me, this whole world of you fronting Drowning Pool has completely changed in my mind in that moment because it wasn't just I'm the next singer. Now it's this like continuation of the bloodline in the sense that you're filling the shoes for a brother and the family is like honoring that. That's really impactful and it means a lot.
Oh
Was that
yeah,
hard for you to
you
then,
can take it. You
you
can
know,
take. I don't know if you've ever read about this, but during Ozfest 2002, Dave would come up and do Halo with us, and he was always on me to come up and do bodies, and I never would, and he would always make fun. He'd make fun of me because there was a couple times where he'd see me on the side of the stage and he'd be ready to announce the fact that I was going to come out and finally do bodies with him. He was so excited, and the next thing you know, he turns around and he sees me like walking away from the stage, and because I'd chicken out, and so finally one day I was like, you know what, dude, we are coming off tour. We're coming off the tour at the halfway point. The last show that we're doing is like Columbus, Ohio. I said 2 days after that, you're playing Indianapolis, Indiana, which is I live 2 hours away from there. I said, then the reason we were jumping off because my wife was due anytime, uh, my second child, and I said, I tell you what, I'll bring the family out and everything. We'll bring the family out, and I'll come up and I'll do bodies with you. And for any diehard Johnny Pool fans out there that may know, Indianapolis ended up being Dave's last show. A lot of fucking emotional shit in here. Ends up being Dave's last
how
show.
we do
So I
this?
actually got up and sang the last song of the last show with Dave. So it was, yeah.
That's insane. I mean, that's like you have to believe that someone was looking over and almost like orchestrating that.
Yeah, I wish they'd have done a better job and kept Dave around.
I agree.
I wouldn't trade. There's little I would trade my experiences with Drowning Pool. I've had some amazing blessings, whether it was the USO shows over in Iraq and different places around the country playing for our troops. Some of the amazing opportunities I've had being as a member of Drowning Pool. man, I'd trade them on a heartbeat to.
to have him back.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Do you think that there's part of you that's continuing the Drowning Pool legacy, so to speak, out of respect for him? Do you think it's more for him than it is for you?
It definitely was early on, and I think as my drinking got more involved, when my drinking increased, I lost track of that. And but it is
Mm,
something that's definitely a very strong point once again. Um, you know, there's like the song "Tear Away." Every night that I
yeah.
sing that song nowadays, man, that thing is an emotional jerk. You know, because I know where he was. I know his mentality. I've heard the guys talk about where the song came originated from lyrically. Um,
Yeah.
but the song for me, um, do I really want this? Sometimes I scare myself. I just can't let it go. Um, can you believe it? Everything happens for a reason? Sometimes I just don't know. You know, I
Mm,
know where Dave's head was when he wrote those lines, but those lines mean something to me now, being in the position that I am, singing those words of his. So it's a very much once again on the forefront of my in my heart and my mind that when we just got off tour with Godsmack over here in Europe, and you're playing in front of tens of thousands of people in an arena, and the lights are out and the lighters up in the air, the cell phones are up in the air, and they're singing "Tear Away," and that's Dave, man. That's Dave's words. You know,
yeah.
that's beautiful. It's beautiful. So that's very much very. It's not just Dave's words. It's because a lot of people want to whatever Dave there. It's CJ, Mike, and Stevie. You know,
Mm,
it's the guys that I'm on stage with. You know, it was those three and Dave. It was those four that made those songs what they were. So it's yeah, it's Dave's very much on all of our hearts, but but it's also very cool because I'm able to, for me personally, I'm able to not only pay tribute by singing Dave's words, but I'm up there with the guys that are just as responsible for those songs being what they are,
yeah.
and so it's cool on so many different levels.
Um, this has been so great so far. I really love it. I want to kind of like keep the vibe going up and down, keep you guessing. Guilty pleasure music or artist? Is there something that you listen to that you're embarrassed about?
No, not that I'm embarrassed about, man. I don't have a wide range of musical taste. I don't. If you caught me listening, if I got the headphones on, chances are I'm listening to an unsigned band here in the UK that I've kind of been helping with advice here and there. Like there's so much talent around here, as well as everywhere. But I'm here, so I see it firsthand.
Mhm.
Um, you got Mother Vulture and Emerald from Plymouth, and you got as I say these, whoever's listening and watching this, write these down 'cause you gotta check them out. But Mother Vulture from Plymouth, you got Sunday from very different bands. You won't come across Mother Vulture is a complete rock band from Plymouth, but the singer's from Belgium or Bulgaria, one or the other, and he's got such a unique voice that I swear to God, everybody I turned it on to, at first they're like, huh, because his voice is so different. But then all of a sudden it grows on you like a fungus, and you're like, that's fucking cool. And it's probably like what people thought the first time they heard Mike Patton. And and
Fair.
but the or Emerald Sunday, which is very kind of they could do a whole album of original stuff that sounds like a Chrysler commercial. Um, just a great like you in the vein of like U2 type band from Scotland, and a solo artist Chloe Oswell. Just it goes on and on. I was helping a band that's now been doing stuff here in the UK. Florence Black from Wales. Just amazing artists. And that's just to name a few, and I'm forgetting a bunch. But if you see me with headphones on, chances are I'm listening to one of those, or I'm listening to sports talk radio, or I'm listening to the shit that I grew up on, because that's still my favorite stuff. AC/DC, Creedence Clearwater Revival. I love the classics. That's probably my guilty pleasure is musically speaking is the classics. I still, to me, there's nothing better than CCR's greatest hits album. There, um, Aerosmith, you can't beat Aerosmith. There's just and today, I love Mumford and Sons. I
Yeah,
love I love everything. I can listen to I can listen to metal, and my mind just went blank. I apologize, but I can listen to a heavy ass band, and then 5 minutes later have Mumford and Sons playing. I like music, man, and that's the beautiful thing about music is there's a flavor out there for every place you find yourself.
I agree. I mean, that's for me, it's such a big part of my life, probably the biggest part of my life. I mean, and I have a similar path to you where my house was very musical and I grew up listening to a lot of classical, jazz, blues, and then classic rock. And then somehow I just discovered rap hip hop, um, late 80s, early 90s. And then around the same time, like I was about a year into rap, and then all of a sudden alt and grunge started to percolate. And then there was the kind of the two for me were battling. And then all of a sudden there was just this whole other movement that ensued afterwards. You guys, new metal, everything. And then from there you just kind of dive into to all of it. Um, is it
Chris?
weird to think that yeah, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, is it weird to think that you know, the stuff that you grew up on, now your stuff might be what people grow up on?
It is, and I think when you've been around, when you've been allowed to be around as long as we have, it's really interesting because you see in the crowd, you'll see a white-haired, white-bearded man with a child on his shoulders, and both of them are singing to your music. It's awesome. So yeah, very much so. I just noticed what time it is, and like I said, my wife is. I should have been down there tending to her a long time ago. So I don't want to rush this, but at the same time, I'm
We
concerned
should wrap
about
up.
her. We should head that way.
No worries. I'm actually at the tail end anyway, so the timing is perfect. Um, I'll just keep it short so that we can end this, and then you can
It's
also
my
ask
fault. I
about.
talk like I
No, no,
talk
no,
and
no.
talk.
This is the point of this. This has been perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better chat with you. Um, I wanted to just ask about. Well, you already kind of answered some of my other questions. We talked about hobbies and whatnot. I want to ask about the music. You said that you're helping bands. Like, what are you doing to help them right now?
Well, the solo artist, Chloe Oswell, I'm working hand in hand with her as far as just trying to find her a home, label wise. As far as Emerald Sunday and Florence Black and different ones, um, I've just tried to be I thought I would try my hand at being a manager, but I don't have that in me. I couldn't talk myself into taking a percentage from a band that needed every dime they had to put in their gas tank and to buy a cheeseburger at McDonald's so they could stand to be on the road. I couldn't be that guy. So I was a horrible manager business wise. I was probably a great manager to have because I wasn't taking any money, but I was a horrible manager as far as it being a business because I couldn't get myself to take money for away from artists that needed it. Um,
Yeah,
but so really, it just came down to being that I just kind of I tried to be and continue to try to be there for advice, um, just to listen to maybe an issue, maybe I can relate to it and give them some options, give them some direction of what your options are. Maybe I was there once, but I can stand back and look at it now. And if you stand back and listen to what I'm saying, maybe you can stand back and see exactly what I mean by it, and maybe make a better. better determination on what's right for you doing that.
So wise counselor
I,
is your official
counselor,
title.
maybe.
Some might say wise, some might say
Yeah,
counselor, but you're giving these bands support in terms of
yeah,
direction
yeah.
of their
Try to.
career and whatnot. Um, I've lost my flow. Why don't we keep things simple? Because otherwise, your publicist might hate me. Um, Drowning Pool. You guys have new singles. There's an album coming.
Oh,
Yeah, there's that whole
yeah.
conversation.
The shit I've been dealing with all day. Right, right.
Yeah. How does 2025, 2026 look for you? Are you excited to like get out there?
Dude, since rejoining the band in 23, we have been hammering it. We just the 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 uh the demand for the band was so great that we've been so busy the first 2 years that this year we were just like, we have to give the United States a breather. We need to just like, let's concentrate on playing some other territories that we haven't hit in a while. Because we also, once I joined the band, we found out that old management had let go of representation for the band in certain countries and certain territories, and the
Mm,
band was not aware of it. So for a decade almost, the band didn't have representation in Europe and didn't have representation in the UK and wasn't aware of it. Just didn't think they were getting offers. So it wasn't until I got in the band, back in the band, and I started asking the questions that we found out that no, we don't have, there's no representation for the band. That's why they haven't been there. So we have cured that, and so this year we've done an Australia tour. We've done Europe already once. We have another European run coming up. We have a full UK run coming up. Uh, there's there's a Japan and other Asian territories in the works right now. So we've been paying attention. We've been really concentrating this year on territories outside of the U.S. To give the U.S. a chance to breathe a little bit, to give them a chance to miss us. And then at the same time, we've been getting into the studio when we can, and which is where Revolution and Madness, the two singles that we've popped out here since I got back in the band, why they've came out. We've got a handful of songs that we need to get in and record, which I believe is happening here within the next couple of weeks. I need to book my tickets actually. That's part of what I've been dealing with today. Um, to get into the studio in Las Vegas where we record with Sean McGee, and so we have a body of work. Uh, we're gonna have a legitimate release coming out by the end of the year, uh, Drowning Pool wise, because once we got back together, the creativity just started going nuts, and the new music started just flowing. So we have so many songs that we need to get out and get recorded. So that's what's on the agenda ASAP, and get that out by the end of the year. And then we're already starting to book up for next year. So we'll be hitting. Though I said let the states have a breather, we do have a lot of festivals, a lot of one-offs going on in the states this year, but no full tours. Whereas next year we'll be looking at doing a lot of the festivals as well as doing some tours in the states. Um, One of my goals for this year was to do Canada because we haven't been there in a long time. Uh, I don't does not look like it's going to happen because right now it would have to be winter time, which I guarantee you there's no chance in hell you're going to get a bunch of guys from Texas up to Canada during the winter. Um, I might even balk at that, but the but hopefully that'll happen next year as well. So yeah, we've got next year, 2026 is the 25th anniversary of the album of Sinner. It's also the 25th anniversary of Scars. So Ryan is going to be a very busy guy, both in the studio for both bands as well as on the road in the next 2 years.
the ideal time to continue taking care of your body and yourself and your wife who supports
Yes,
you. So
yes,
you got to go. You got a lot of work ahead, man. Expansion.
absolutely.
I really appreciate you taking the time to be on this brand new Heart Dealer podcast, and I'm really excited to get this chat out to the world. Um, Anything you want to sign off with?
Man, just thank you for doing this, for taking the time to do this. What you do keeps people like myself connected with the people out there that allow me to do what I do. The people that have supported the music through the years and everything. And without them, I'm not here. And so thank you for taking the time to make that bridge that we can stay in contact with, so that we have that connection so the artists like myself have that connection with the people that allow us to be who we are. And thank you very much, and thank them for allowing us to be who we are.
It's a pleasure.